The Triassic began in a world that was just recovering from the greatest catastrophe in Earth's history, the mass extinction at the end of the Permian. More than 90% of all species had disappeared, and in the first millions of years of the Triassic, only a few survivors dominated the ecosystems. About 230 million years ago, in the middle of the late Triassic, they finally appeared. The first dinosaurs. They were by no means yet the giants like T-Rex or Brachiosaurus. Many of them were small, agile, and lightly built. They walked on two legs, had long tails for balance, and many were hunters that preyed on small animals or insects. Dinosaurs evolved from a group of bipedal archosaurs that were particularly well adapted to life on dry land. At that time, other groups still dominated on land, such as the crocodile-like Rauisuchians, the lurking phytosaurs in rivers and lakes, and some remnants of the mammal-like reptiles, such as cynodonts and dicynodonts. They had strong hind legs, an upright gait, and probably quick reflexes. And while the first dinosaurs were developing on land, life in the sea was also changing dramatically. At the beginning of the Triassic, the oceans were still rather barren. Coral reefs were absent, and many coasts looked desolate. But slowly life returned. Fish, clams, and squids spread out again, and from the survivors, new predators evolved. Some reptile species that once lived on land now ventured into the water to hunt or to hide from enemies. At first, they only stayed submerged for short periods, but over millions of years their bodies changed. Legs turned into fins, their tails became stronger, perfect for swimming. Some eventually remained in the sea forever and became the rulers of the oceans. One group, the nothosaurs, lived in the middle and late Triassic. Slenderly built, with long necks, they lay in wait in shallow waters and snapped at fish with lightning speed. From them evolved the pistosaurs, which already looked much more like the later plesiosaurs, with strong paddle-like flippers and bodies made for the open sea. Also in the Triassic, at the same time, a completely different lineage of marine hunters appeared, the first ichthyosaurs. The earliest forms, like Utatsusaurus from the early Triassic, still had long, wriggling bodies, almost like a sea snake with flippers. But soon, they developed a powerful tail with a vertical fin and a streamlined body that made them look like sharks and dolphins. This turned them into the fastest swimmers of their time. Both groups eventually took the decisive step. They never returned to land, not even to lay eggs. Instead, they gave birth to live young in the water, just like whales do today. Their ancestors had lungs, and even as fully developed marine hunters, they still had to surface regularly to breathe. Also in the Triassic lived the placodonts, stocky marine reptiles with broad teeth specialized in eating mussels and snails. Some species had turtle-like shells, and in fact, the very first turtles also appeared during this time. Odontocheles already had a fully developed plastron belly shell, but not yet a carapace back shell. Later came species like Proganocheles, one of the first fully shelled turtles. It lived around 210 million years ago, was about half a meter long, carried a massive shell, and additionally had spikes on its neck and tail. The earliest dinosaurs were mostly small to medium-sized, between 1 and 3 meters long. So, dwarfs compared to the 12-meter-long T-Rex or the 30-meter-long sauropods, the group of dinosaurs with long necks. They were fast and agile, with long legs, light skeletons, and long tails. Many were carnivores, some were already herbivores. They lived in dry, open landscapes where they could move around easily. Most likely, the first dinosaurs already had feathers. For a long time, people thought all dinosaurs had scales, like lizards or crocodiles. Many fossils of small predatory dinosaurs like Velociraptor, Microraptor, or Sinosauropteryx show that they were feathered, even though they were not yet birds. Even in large carnivores like Eutyrannus, a relative of T. rex, evidence has been found of a fluffy coat of feathers. Most feathered dinosaurs could not yet fly in the beginning. They were too heavy or had wings that were too short. But the feathers still had many advantages. For keeping warm, for example, feathers insulate the body, like a jacket filled with down. Feathers could be colorful and may have been used for camouflage or for display, such as attracting mates or scaring off enemies. Feathers protected against sun, cold, and small injuries. Later, perhaps even for gliding in tree-dwelling dinosaurs like Microraptor, which roamed the primeval forests about 120 million years ago. It had 4 wings and was probably able to glide from tree to tree. The fact that many dinosaurs had feathers is strong evidence that they were warm-blooded, like birds and mammals. Warm-blooded animals can keep their body temperature constant on their own, even when it is cold outside. But to do that, you need a kind of thermal insulation, and feathers help to store heat. Researchers today believe many small to medium-sized dinosaurs were probably warm-blooded. Some large herbivores may have been cold-blooded because their size alone kept them warm. There were probably different mixed forms depending on habitat and body structure. Cold-blooded animals, in contrast to warm-blooded animals, cannot regulate their body temperature on their own. They are as warm or as cold as their surroundings. They need the warmth of the sun to be active. Lizards, snakes, or crocodiles, for example, are cold-blooded. That's why you often see them lying on rocks in the morning. They warm themselves up before they can move around or start hunting. The plant life of the Triassic was shaped by conifers, ginkgos, tree ferns, and horsetails. Flowering plants didn't exist yet. They only appeared much later in the Cretaceous period. Even though dinosaurs were the stars of the Triassic, there was buzzing, crawling, and fluttering all around them. The air was full of insects, beetles, dragonflies, cockroaches, grasshoppers, and many more. Some dragonflies were as big as a human hand. There were no colorful flowers yet, but insects were already pollinating ferns, ginkgos, and conifers. For many small animals, and even for some early dinosaurs, they were an important snack. Some of the very first known dinosaurs are now well studied. One of them is Eoraptor, whose name means dawn thief. It lived 230 million years ago, making it one of the oldest known dinosaurs. It was about 1 meter long, walked on 2 legs, and lived in South America. It probably fed on both plants and meat. Another early dinosaur that also lived around 230 million years ago was Herrerasaurus. A fast, 2-legged predator, it measured about 3 to 4 meters in length. With its sharp teeth, it was one of the earliest meat eaters and apparently very successful in its habitat. Saturnalia is also among these early representatives. A slim and lightweight omnivore from Brazil, it lived about 233 million years ago and is considered one of the oldest known relatives of the later long-necked dinosaurs. Especially puzzling is the discovery of Nyasasaurus from Africa. Some scientists believe it may be older than all other known dinosaurs, but it has not yet been definitively proven whether it truly belonged to the dinosaurs or was just a close relative. If it really were a dinosaur, that would mean the first dinosaurs already existed more than 240 million years ago. As is so often the case with dinosaurs, however, the remains of Neosaurus consisted of too few fragments to study it in more detail. That's why most researchers still assume that the first true dinosaurs appeared around 233 million years ago. If we assume that Eoraptor and Herrerasaurus were among the first dinosaurs, it means the earliest dinosaurs lived in South America. The climate of the Triassic was generally warm, but in the interior of Pangaea, conditions were extreme. Blazing hot summers and huge temperature differences between day and night. Many rivers only carried water seasonally, and there were vast salt lakes that formed thick crusts of salt when they dried out. There were no separate oceans as we know them today, but one great ocean and one enormous landmass with mountains, deserts, rivers, and lakes. Because Pangaea was not divided into many continents, the first dinosaurs could easily spread across wide areas. They didn't have to cross oceans to reach new regions. They could simply walk across land. That is why dinosaur fossils are found today all over the world, in South America, Africa, Europe, Asia, and North America. They all go back to animals that once lived together on Pangaea. The climate on Pangaea was mostly hot and dry, especially in the inland regions. There were large deserts, but also rivers, lakes, swamps, and forests along the coasts. Because the land was so vast, many different habitats could develop, perfect conditions for the evolution of a wide variety of dinosaur species. But Pangaea did not last forever. Around 200 million years ago, about 30 million years after the first dinosaurs, Pangaea began to break apart. As the land masses drifted apart, groups of dinosaurs became separated, and on each continent they evolved in different directions. The dinosaurs split into different groups, from dangerous hunters to armored plant eaters. The first dinosaurs were still small and quite similar in build, but over time they developed in many different directions, depending on how they lived, what they ate, and where they lived. Some became giant plant eaters that could strip trees bare with their long necks. Others became fast hunters that chased other animals with claws and teeth. Some grew thick armor plates, others developed horns, bony shields, or even coats of feathers. All dinosaurs can be divided into two major families based on the shape of their hip bones, Saurischia and Ornithischia. The first family, the Saurischia, meaning lizard-hipped, were dinosaurs whose pelvis looked similar to that of modern lizards. They included two very different groups, the theropods and the sauropodomorphs. The theropods. These were two-legged meat-eaters such as Tyrannosaurus rex, one of the best-known hunters, reaching up to 12 meters in length. T-Rex is probably the most famous dinosaur of all, and not without reason. Tyrannosaurus rex was not only huge and terrifying, it also had the strongest bite of any land animal ever. Its teeth were as thick as bananas and up to 30 centimeters long. When it bit down, it delivered a force of more than 5 tons, twice as strong as the bite of today's most powerful predator, the saltwater crocodile. With a single bite, it could crush bones as if they were soft branches. For its prey, there was almost no escape. It lived 68 to 66 million years ago, in the late Cretaceous. Even bigger than T-Rex was Spinosaurus, over 15 meters long. It lived about 100 million years ago, partly in the water and mainly hunted fish, much like a giant crocodile. Its most striking feature was the sail on its back, which could grow up to 2 meters high. Velociraptor was no giant. It lived around 75 million years ago and was about the size of a turkey, but it was lightning fast and intelligent. It probably hunted in groups, had sharp, sickle-shaped claws on its feet, and was likely feathered. Its intelligence and agility made it a dangerous predator. Gallimimus was an ostrich-like dinosaur with long legs and a light body. It could probably run more than 60 kilometers per hour, faster than a modern cheetah over long distances. Its speed was its greatest weapon, helping it both to escape predators and to catch insects and small prey. Gallimimus lived about 70 million years ago in the late Cretaceous. Birds, by the way, are descended from small feathered theropods. The second group in the family of the Saurischia were the sauropodomorphs. These were the giant longnecks like Brachiosaurus, Diplodocus, and Apatosaurus. At the beginning, in the late Triassic, a little over 200 million years ago, they were still small, slim, and walked on two legs, like Plateosaurus. Fossils of Plateosaurus have often been found in large groups, a sign that these early longnecks may already have lived in herds. Only later, in the Jurassic and Cretaceous, did they evolve into the sauropods, the largest land animals that ever existed. Over time, their body plan changed. They switched to four legs, their necks and tails grew longer and longer, and they developed a gigantic body with a comparatively tiny head. These gentle giants ate hundreds of kilos of plants every day, leaves from tall trees, ferns, and conifer branches. Their long necks helped them reach food no other animal could. Some, like Brachiosaurus, could stretch their heads 13 meters up into the treetops. Others, like Diplodocus, were extremely long and probably used their whip-like tails for defense. Argentinosaurus, at over 30 meters in length and up to 70 tons in weight, was one of the largest land dwellers of all time. In large herds, these peaceful giants roamed forests and plains, protected by their sheer size, since only the very largest predators dared to attack them. The second family is called Ornithischia, meaning bird-hipped. The name bird-hipped dinosaurs sounds as if birds were their descendants, but that's not true. Birds actually come from the lizard-hipped dinosaurs, more precisely from small predators. The hips of the bird-hipped dinosaurs only look similar to those of modern birds by coincidence. This group included all the other four-legged dinosaurs. They were all plant-eaters. Many had horns, armor, or backplates. From these two families arose the entire diversity of dinosaurs we know today. Ankylosaurs were like living tanks. Their backs were covered with thick, bony plates that fused into an impenetrable armor. Many had a heavy bony club at the end of the tail, with which they could strike predators hard. Ankylosaurus and Euoplocephalus are the best known among them. Then there were the stegosaurs. They were easy to recognize. They had 2 rows of large bony plates along their backs. For a long time, people thought these plates served only for defense. But today, researchers suspect they also helped regulate body temperature and perhaps even played a role in display for mate choice. On their tails, they had sharp spikes used as weapons. These are known as the thagomizer. Ceratopsians, like Triceratops or Styracosaurus, were 4-legged plant-eaters with massive horns on their faces and often brightly colored bony frills behind their heads. The horns were not only used for defense against predators, but also to impress rivals or attract mates. Hadrosaurs had broad, flat beaks, perfect for nibbling plants. Many could walk on 2 or 4 legs and lived in large herds. Some even had hollow bony crests on their heads, which they probably used to produce loud calls. For example, Parasaurolophus. Toward the end of the Triassic, animals conquered not only land and sea, but also the sky. The first pterosaurs took to the air. Their ancestors were small, agile archosaurs that probably hunted insects. From them evolved creatures with astonishing changes. Their bones became thin and hollow like tubes, their chest muscles strong, and a single finger on the hand grew longer than all the others. A wing membrane stretched from this finger down to the legs, and the first wing in Earth's history was complete. With it, pterosaurs could not only glide, but also actively flap and fly. They were the first vertebrates to conquer the sky, long before birds appeared. By the end of the Triassic, the world was full of new rulers. On land, the first dinosaurs dominated. In the air, the first pterosaurs. Along the coasts, crocodile-like creatures lurked. And in the seas, ichthyosaurs and the ancestors of plesiosaurs hunted. But about 201 million years ago, the Triassic period ended abruptly, with another mass extinction. It wasn't as big as the one at the end of the Permian, but it still changed life on Earth dramatically. The Earth was in the middle of the breakup of the supercontinent Pangaea. At that time, massive volcanic eruptions occurred, so many that entire regions were covered in lava. They released not only glowing rock, but also gases that changed the atmosphere. At first, the Earth cooled, because sulfur particles blocked the sunlight. Then the climate warmed dramatically. About half of all animal species in the sea and on land could not survive and disappeared forever. Those especially affected were the Rauisuchians, the phytosaurs, many giant amphibians, and numerous species of marine reptiles. This left the dinosaurs without their main competitors on land. The dinosaurs, on the other hand, were still small, adaptable, and agile at that time. Many species could tolerate both heat and cold. They reproduced faster than their larger rivals and were able to occupy different habitats that became available after the mass extinction. Crocodile-like creatures, marine reptiles, pterosaurs, and, very importantly, the small and inconspicuous ancestors of mammals also survived. When the climate stabilized again in the Jurassic, the dinosaurs were ready. They rose to become the undisputed rulers of the land, and would remain so for the next 135 million years.
discussion